Anyway, I then said to her, well, it's a damn sight better than what I've got already. Yeah.
Well, wives are like that. It seems I'm going to be one more of these people that say this.
Okay.
But it seems that the US dollar is on the brink of collapse. Right now, we've been saying this for a long time.
Mm.
But if it does collapse, let's face it, it's going to make life very hard for the people of a nation who, for at least a couple of generations, has been living off the back of the rest of the world.
Mm.
Now, why has the US been living off the back of the rest of the world? It's because it's the rest of the world that have been keeping the dollar, the US dollar, afloat.
Mm. Yeah.
Because it benefits from being the world's reserve currency. If you want to make any transaction, international transaction, you have to buy dollars before you buy the thing because all the transactions are done in dollars.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we know that the BRICS nations announced that they're going to trade with each other in their own currencies. Right, that's the first 5 BRICS nations.
Yeah.
But also last year, BRICS announced that the likes of Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Algeria, Argentina,
Mm.
Mexico, Nigeria, and a few others, they want to join the BRICS too, and they
Mm.
will probably follow suit.
Mm.
So they are going to abandon the dollar and they use their own currencies between them. That's going to leave a glut of dollars sloshing around the world. There
Yeah.
could be trillions of dollars around the world sloshing around, and nobody wants them.
Mm.
So that's why the dollar is going to collapse in value.
Mm.
Now, the latest that I heard today, which means it probably happened yesterday,
Yeah.
is that the term petrodollar will soon be extinct because there was the agreement made between the US and Saudi Arabia,
Mm.
which was back in 1975,
Yeah.
74, 75. It's expired,
Oh.
and no negotiation has been made to maintain the deal. So officially, uh, Saudi Arabia is free to
Mm.
sell petrol, soil, to
Mm.
whom it, in whatever currency it needs to, it
Yeah.
wants, and it doesn't have to be the dollar. Now, of course, if Saudi Arabia does this, the US, of course, could also pull its troops out of the country,
Mm.
because that was part of the agreement that
Yeah.
the US would supply Saudi Arabia with security if as long as they sold their oil with the US dollar.
Yeah.
But I suggest that that's just a mere detail because there are other countries, i.e. China,
Mm.
i.e. Russia, who are more than willing to fill that void if the US I've got a flight floating around me. Don't know if you can see it.
Yeah.
Keeps landing on my face. But anyway,
Okay. Yeah.
it shows that we're live.
Yes. Yeah. Be genuine. Yeah.
So if nobody wants a trillions of dollars already in circulation, the value is going to drop. Inflation in the US is going to roar.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, the American dream will become cha-cha a nightmare.
Mm.
Over to you.
Right. Okay. Be careful of that fly. It might be a fly on the wall from China or US or
Right.
somewhere. Yeah. Yes. Right. Right. World economics. Now, I was discussing the BRICS, with someone the other day, and I said, "There's someone from the UK, stroke Europe, stroke old world. Let's call it the old world for example. Um, I am very, very concerned about the BRICS nations. Yeah. As somebody who lives in Brazil, I can see a lot of potential from a Brazilian point perspective of the country of Brazil to be a leader of, if you like, a whole new world.
If the Brazilian government can hold it together and don't start stealing again.
Well, okay, there's always going to be lots of.
That's another story. But
yeah. There's always another risk, and
I wanted to say that just to.
Yeah. We've got to be even-handed here. I mean, I'm not being, like I said, I'm looking at this from a balanced point of view. I mean, I know, you get people in the US and off BRICS or troubling. Yes, the very notion that it's troubling, it might mean it might actually be a good thing because people don't worry about things of no consequence. I mean, I don't like the idea of China taking over everything, but hey, that's business. It's free marketing, free market business, which I partly believe in. So, again, we can talk about Russia and other things, but the reality is that what is it, going to be 30% of the global economy or something like this, from what I could see the other day. I mean, these are the figures that were being quoted, I believe. Totally outside the accepted way of doing things. I mean, I did read an article that says it's actually quite healthy if you're going to have two competitive systems. Provided it's only commercial, it's not going to go military. It could be actually quite good for the world. It will focus the minds rather than have one conglomerate idea. We're going to end up in a bipolar world. What does that actually mean in the longer term? And this is what I'm thinking. What does that actually mean in the longer term? It doesn't mean that in the Western world that everybody's suddenly got to stop dealing with other countries. It is going to be quite good. In my opinion, it's actually quite good for lower countries to be part of. Rather than exploitation, it should theoretically allow growth. If we imagine that China is not exploitive. Not in the short term, they're not. In the longer term, well, who knows? I can see that. Brazil being one of the leading countries, the top 5. South Africa could probably do it with a shot in the arm from it. So it would probably benefit Africa, which has suffered, like I say, bad governance for 30 years. Don't forget the trajectory of South Africa is almost the same as Brazil, with a new government coming in within a few years of each other, and Eastern Europe as well, interestingly enough. That will be interesting. Start putting Eastern European countries in who are going to be outside of things, not just Russia. It's going to annoy, it's going to scare some people. The idea of civilization is we're always looking to improve, change, improve. We have now, whether we like it or not, got a global civilization, which isn't working for everyone. And I live in a country which has been exploited since at least 1500s, or from the 1500s now, not since, onwards. Remembering that 70% of the Industrial Revolution was probably paid for by Brazilian gold. I don't know if that's a true fact or not. It's something I read. Maybe you know, Steve. By Portugal, of course. So if we look at history of the world, it's always been this way. It's changing. We went through colonial times. We might have a slightly different way of doing business in the future. It might be very, very useful for the US in the long run. Like you said, they're living off the backs of others, but they've also been having to pay for others as well. That China take up some of that financial burden, China and other bigger countries, given that Brazil potentially is not a poor country. we know the resources that are here. We also know the inherent problems there are with doing business in Brazil as well, to a certain point. Brazil does need to, as you say, stabilize exactly what its political agenda is.
Well put.
Yeah, yeah, that is the issue. It's samba politics. It swings one way, it swings the other. Yeah, it's an interesting country to live in. It's a fascinating study. I try and read as much as I can about BRICS. Obviously, I am but a mere mortal. I don't understand it all. I can see inherent problems in the future as it is in other people's interests or other entities' interests to destroy BRICS if they can, to disrupt it, its development. It's certainly an interesting project. I am still against big organisations such as the EU and the United Nations, because I don't often see them as a force for good. A loose thing like the BRICS being able to operate, deal with each other in a very loose framework, which is exactly as I see it, to a point, and then just make it easier to trade with each other, is interesting for me. We will be able to help Africa, for example.